All right, hello, everybody. Hopping on to this NGLA virtual session. Grateful for the opportunity to kick it with y'all. Gonna give it a couple seconds as folks pop on, and then we're gonna get started. All right, let's jump right in. So happy Monday, everybody. My name is Qy'Darrius McEachern. I go by Q. Sending a lot of gratitude and gratefulness to NGLA for the opportunity to kick it with you all for just a few minutes and talk about a topic that I think is really, really important and relevant and connective for college campuses across the country. And so feeling a lot of gratitude to be in this virtual space with you all this afternoon. And so to start our conversation today, I really want to start with this thought. I believe that there are very specific moments in our lives that serve as stark pivot points in our journey. Moments where you can think about life before and life after a very specific moment in your journey. Think about it for yourself. Think about life before you met your lifelong best friend and life after, or life before you joined your organization and then life after. I mean, even we can think about life before Beyonce released Lemonade, the visual album, clearly, in life after. Also, shout out to Beyonce for winning Album of the Year last night. Shout out. In life after. How we can think about life before March 2020 and life after. You see, I've had so many of these different pivot points in my life that they have twisted and contorted my life experience in so many different directions. And I want to share two of those moments with you all today. The first of those being January 9th, 2016, my first year of college. I remember it like it was any other day, honestly. I was chilling in the dorm room called Krusty Craig, is what we call it in undergrad. Krusty's first year dorm. Everybody has one of those on their campus. And I was hanging out with my boys, doing whatever first year college students do, eating pizza, watching a game, listening to music, hanging out, having a good time. I remember checking my phone and it had died. And at that point, I had an Android and there was no charger in sight because it was iPhone Nation. And so I decided it was time to just pack it up and go back to my dorm room. It was a Saturday around midnight. I remember it vividly. And I don't know about anyone else, but before a life-changing event, I've always had these kind of, I can only call it butterflies or an anxiety that showed up for me. It was something that made me feel uneasy as I was walking back to my dorm, whether I knew what was coming or not. I remember walking into my dorm and I feel like I heard an RA say, "Oh, there he is." Elevator doors open. I go up, click the 11th floor. I ride it to the top. Doors open and I see my aunt standing at the end of the hallway, just looking back at me. And boy, y'all, I was stressed. I can't even lie to you. See, I grew up in an extremely, extremely strict household where I never had a curfew growing up, literally because I didn't go anywhere in the first place. I'm telling you, it was strict. And so I'm looking down the hall, seeing my aunt standing there Saturday at midnight, and everything starts to go through my head. What did I do wrong? What mistake did I made? What could I have possibly done that she'd be here? And then I saw the look on her face. And I realized in that moment, I didn't do anything wrong, but something was wrong. And she sat me down in my room and she told me solemnly, gentle as possible, that my dad had just passed away from a heart attack unexpectedly. And we had to go home. And so I was like, all right, we got to go. Let's get it. Pack up my stuff. How's my mom doing? All of that, starting to go into go mode. And she paused me. She said, "Stop. Just sit down for a second." And I got to be real with y'all. I don't think I've ever cried harder than I did that night. Pivot point. Life before. Life after. Another pivot point for you. August 10th, 2016. Same year, I'm just a sophomore now. And after a trash spring semester where I took some really bad advice where they just said to get over grief, just get back on the horse and get back moving. Just get back busy. Maybe folks have heard that before. Maybe you've heard that before. And I had a horrible semester. I decided I was going to get back to where I was. I decided I was going to build myself back up. I decided to become an RA because I wanted to lean into leadership, lean into a leadership role. I decided that I was going to become the vice president of internal affairs. I applied and I got it. And I was so excited because I was a sophomore serving in that VP role within the organization. This was the organization on campus that brought in all the big artists and the speakers and we did all the big events. So I was excited. I decided I was going to get my academics right. And I'm sitting in RA training to start the semester on August 10th. And I have 5 missed calls from my mom when I check my phone. And so I'm fumbling to call her back, and she puts me on three-way with my brother. And she tells me in the same tone that my aunt used just about 8 months before that my grandmother had passed away after her battle with dementia. And I need for y'all to understand my grandmother was the matriarch of my family. She was the glue that we felt held everything together. Maybe you feel similarly. I stayed with her for a year, lived with her for a year when I was in middle school. She was the glue, truly, that we felt held everything together. And so when she passed away, man, I tell you, everything fell apart. I failed my first college course that semester. That VP job that I just was so excited about telling you about, I lost it. GPA was too low. That RA position, barely kept it by a thread. I had to place an appeal to keep that job. I went through what I know now, but didn't know then, was many symptoms of depression. Feeling lethargic all the time. General things like not wanting to get out of bed at all, skipping class, avoiding people, and then other times showing up and being hypersocial and showing up to prove people I'm good. I'm good. I don't want anybody to worry about me. I'm okay. Just trying to prove that I was okay. And after my son was born, I was sitting with these thoughts of how did I really get through and begin to get through some of these hardest moments in my life, those difficult moments. And I sat with the fact that it wasn't the people that told me you need to make sure you get your GPA right because you need to make sure you can graduate on time. Or, oh, that leadership position is so important and you need to make sure you have those for your resume. It wasn't any of that. One of the only things that helped me get through one of the darkest times in my life were the people around me. It was the people that sat with me till 2 a.m., literally just because I needed their presence around me. It was the people that helped me write my academics, but one course, one assignment, one tutoring session at a time. It was the people that saw me as a person first. And, I don't even have to tell you all this, but I'll iterate it. And it's that it's really, really freaking hard to be a college student right now today. Dealing with so many different disasters and atrocities happening simultaneously, going through unprecedented event after unprecedented event after unprecedented event over and over. Practically everything being unaffordable. You look at tuition, fees, books, rent, groceries, the simple things being so expensive. All the while, you're told to show up every single day. Show up and make sure you get that 4.0. Make sure you get that 4.0 and make sure that you run those 3 organizations as a leader of those organizations because you need to make sure that those are relevant on your resume because you need to make sure that resume is tight because you need to make sure you get that internship, right? Because you need that internship to make sure you get that job before you graduate because you don't want to be the person that graduates without a job, right? Over and over, we're told all these things that we need to do. all these ways we need to show up, all these things we need to be, but who's taking care of us? Who's supporting us? Who's holding us? Who is our village? You see, that's my sole reason for kicking it with y'all in this virtual space today. My whole reason is for you to ponder that question. Who is my village? Who is supporting me? Who can take care of me? Who are the people I can lean on? And another important question of whose village am I a part of? Who can lean on me? Who can I support? Because y'all, this time that we end, community is our biggest strength. And so I challenge us to lean into that. And so I want to welcome you again into this space and introduce myself to you as well. So I'm not just this random person on a screen. My name is Q, and I'm a community engagement specialist, but really I'm just a kid from South Carolina. I went to college at the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill, which I'll tell you about, and really had many experiences that prompted me to really show up now as someone who wants to support folks from simply listening and learning about all these different things to action and change. What can we do as leaders in our organizations to support the folks that we've been tasked to lead? And how can we get support ourselves as we're navigating really, really difficult times? And so I'm asking for you to lean in with me for a few minutes as we dive deeper. I graduated from the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill. Go Heels. Tar Heel born, Tar Heel bred. When I die, I'm a Tar Heel dead. Still rah Carolina, Carolina, and go to hell Duke. That's just how it goes. Even though we lost the Duke a couple days ago. That's a conversation for another day. I'm also a proud member of Phi Beta Sigma Fraternity Incorporated. Proud member of Phi Beta Sigma Fraternity Incorporated across Spring 18, the Xi Gamma chapter at University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill. Phi Beta Sigma means the world to me. This organization taught me so much about what it means to show up for communities that I'm a part of and communities that I'm not. What it means to challenge systems and structures that are in place that are harming folks, how to get into good trouble as we're challenging policies, rules, and regulations that are harmful. Taught me what true brotherhood and connection really means, what it means to lean into our shared power and to create change. Phi Beta Sigma means the world to me. And so I share that with you. And it's a fly photo. Come on now. Let's get into it for real. You see the ones on my feet. It's clean. And then there's Chipotle, man. I get this question all the time. Why are you putting Chipotle in your professional presentation? It is what it is. It's a part of who I am. I love Chipotle. Chipotle is my life. It is. It's it. And so I share that with you. If you love Chipotle, please drop into the chat wherever you're watching from, YouTube, wherever. Drop into the chat. Chipotle is my life. I love it. Sometimes when I put this slide up, folks are like, oh, but Moe's. And I'm like, okay, they got dry rice. Qdoba is all right, but Chipotle is king. Chipotle is queen. And so we celebrate that part of who I am. And I share that with you. And lastly, I love music. I love music for two reasons, y'all. One being that I was diagnosed with generalized anxiety about 4 years ago now. And so I listen to music to help ground myself before I go to work in the morning, before I step in front of an audience, before I step out to dinner. Music helps me ground myself. And so I love music for that. I also love music because I think about the eras of my life based on the music I was listening to and who I was listening to it with, honestly, my people, my village. I think back to middle school and it was Buy You a Drink by T-Pain, or going into college, Trap Queen, RGF Island by Fetty Wap. Or if we go into college, Dreams and Nightmares on repeat. Music means the world to me. And so I share that with you. And I've already also shared why I'm here, but I want to give more space to it. I firmly believe that it's important for us to think about connection and community as it pertains to us as individuals and to the responsibilities that we have for our organizations. I think we have to understand these concepts and then intentionally dive into creating community. My friend Dan Fail says that community does not just happen, it's not by happenstance. We can take some responsibility in building community in the spaces that we have power. And so I want to be a catalyst for that, for you. So let's take it all the way back, right? Let's take it all the way back. Is that a Cookie Monster shirt? Absolutely, 100%. It was swag back then. Hey, y'all thought I was going to leave it up too for you to snap a pic or a screenshot? Nope. But you may have heard this phrase before. It takes a village to raise a child. It's a phrase that I heard a lot as my wife was pregnant with our son, Isaiah. It's a phrase that I heard consistently. It takes a village. It takes a village. Make sure you lean on your village. Make sure you're asking for help. Make sure you have folks be there and support you. It takes a village to raise a child. And what I didn't know is that it actually derives from an African proverb, which talks about the concept that it takes a village of people, a lot of different people with different skills and perspectives to effectively raise a child up to be successful and cared for. It takes a collection of parents, grandparents, siblings, aunts, uncles. It takes daycare providers, educators, physicians, dentists. It takes a collection of folks, friends, to build up and support the child as they grow. And so, of course, I started asking the question, is this just something that people say? Because, people say a lot of things. Or is this something that we have research around, that we have anecdotal data even around? And it turns out there's a study done that did show that there are more positive outcomes for children that grow up in the warm embrace of a village, particularly around mental health, physical health, academic performance. And so then I started asking the question, well, there are benefits to the village, both anecdotally as well as research, peer review based research. And so why do we then, as we grow up, start to allow our village to dissipate? Why do we go off to school, go off to grad school, start to get our first jobs, and start to say things like, well, I need to be able to prove that I can do all these things by myself. I don't want to have to think I have to lean on somebody. I don't want people to think that I have to depend on other folks. I don't want to be a burden to other folks. That one sits with me. I don't have to be a burden to other folks. I don't want to be a burden. Someone's going through something worse than I am. We say these things consistently to ourselves as reasons why we don't lean in and open ourselves up and be vulnerable with the people around us who we say we care about and that care about us. And I saw even deeper as I was looking into some research, a Gallup study that was done from American perspectives that showed that friendship is in decline in our country. Friendship, the amount of friends that people say they have, the amount of close friends that folks have is in decline. You see, the study showed that over the past 30 years, the amount of women that said they had at least 3 close friends decreased from 17% of the population to 13%. The amount of men that said they had at least 3 close friends decreased from 16% to 9%. The amount of women that reported having 0 close friends, 1 in 10. 1 in 10 women reported having 0 close friends. And men, 1 in 6. Think about how many folks are in the spaces that we navigate, the amount of people on your campus, the amount of people in your organization. Shoot. Friends are not the end all be all of the village, right? But friendship is such a big piece of our college experience, of our communities. There's such a big piece that this data is so disheartening. And also, I think that friendship is a big piece of fraternity and sorority. We all join our organizations for different reasons. Some of us decided to join a fraternity or a sorority because we were going to a new place, a new city, a new campus, and we wanted to be connected to folks, build community with folks that have similar value sets to us, similar things and ways that they like to connect. We decided to join fraternity and sorority for community. Some of us decided that we wanted to join because we saw our parents, our family members, our brothers, our sisters, our cousins be a part of these organizations and have such intentional, impactful relationships built, such positive experiences that we decided we wanted to be a part of that. Some of us joined because we saw the impact and change making that our organizations have had, the immense power building that sat during many different movements throughout our country that our organizations were centralized as part of. And we decided, I want to be a part of that. I want to give service back to the communities that I'm a part of. I want to be in the shared power making that our organizations have. But within all of us joining our organizations, a through line in our experiences, regardless of council, organization type, a through line is community. We wanted to be in community and connection with folks with the similar value sets as us. We wanted to lean into the shared power that fraternity and sorority brings, both at a local level and at an international level for many of our organizations. We wanted to lean into the change making that our organizations have. That is the power of our organizations at their best. But I think it's important to note that our organizations are not always at their best as it pertains to community and connection building, as it pertains to power and change. I think our organizations have barriers and walls and flaws that have been built into them from the beginning. And I think the only way to speak to those is to start at the beginning. We can start thinking about with the first fraternities. The first fraternity, Phi Beta Kappa, created, Psychic Society created specifically for white, cisgendered, affluent men. Created for these folks to be in community with one another, to lean into connection, to be in their shared power, and to create change. You see, the first fraternities were not built, honestly, for the most people who are on this session today, and most people within fraternity and sorority life internationally now. So we continue on and we see the first women's fraternities, first sororities initially created to create community, to lean into connection, to share in power, and to create change. You see, the folks in this picture would not have been able to be a part of the first fraternities and aim to create their own spaces for similar reasons. Walls and barriers created from the beginning, and still many people, even folks on this call, would not have been allowed to be a part of the first sororities. And we continue on. We see Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated, the first historically Black fraternity recognized, founded to create community and connection spaces for Black men, to lean into shared power and to create change, particularly in a time where racism impacted and devastated many communities for Black people. Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated created to share in power and to create change. Continue on, we see Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated, first historically Black sorority, founded to create community, to lean into connection, to share in power, and to create change for Black women. Continue on, we see the first Latin-based organizations created, Lambda Theta Phi Latin Fraternity Incorporated, widely recognized as the first Latino-based organization to share in community, to create connection, to share in power, and to create change. And we can continue on seeing Lambda Theta Alpha, Latin, sorority incorporated, created to share in community, to lean into connection, to share in power, and to create change, to create communities and spaces that did not exist previously. We continue on. We see the first Asian interest organizations created to share in community, to lean into connection, to share in power, and to create change. We continue on. We see queer-based organizations created to lean into community, to share in power, to have connections, and to create change. We see that organizations were doing a poor job, a horrible job of creating safe, bare minimum spaces for folks who identify as part of the LGBTQIA plus community. And so communities were created. We see these barriers built from the beginning, these walls built from the beginning. We see organizations literally creating spaces because the spaces did not exist prior to. And we see these walls now, even today in our organizations, reinforced by systemic oppression. How can we expect for community and connection to build? For us to share in our power collectively as fraternity sorority life communities to create change when folks physically, mentally, emotionally cannot feel safe interacting in and throughout our organizations, our councils. Racism shows up as a big barrier and wall that still exists within our organizations. This is an example from 2016 at the University of Oklahoma. This is one specific example of how overt racism shows up within our organizations, but it is not the only example. We see how these different instances of racism show up both at macro levels and at micro levels as well. We see this show up as racist slurs being shared. We see this show up as blackface. We see this show up as folks within our organizations, within fraternities and sororities, mocking Black women, making monkey noises. We see this show up in overt ways. We see this show up in covert ways by talking about fraternities and sororities as only the historically white ones and talking about culturally based organizations as those other organizations. We have fraternity and sorority recruitment, and then we have those other orgs. Racism serves as a barrier in our organizations. We can continue on and think about the ways that homophobia and transphobia impacts our ability to build community within our organizations. I think that our organizations do a very poor job of creating bare minimum safe spaces, inclusive spaces, empowering spaces, liberatory spaces for folks who identify as LGBTQIA+. We've seen anecdotal stories consistently around folks being closeted while they're on campus before they come out and able to share in their true and authentic selves after they leave their undergraduate chapter, because the undergraduate chapter is saying things like, we want you to be a part, but the ways that you express yourself, who you are, is not representative of our chapter. It's a problem. How can we expect for community and connection to grow when we don't create space for folks to be their full and authentic selves, share in their full selves with us as organizations? And then we can talk about sexual assault and harassment. If this is a topic for you that is particularly triggering, I want to give you the space to please press the mute button, turn your screen down. Please do whatever you need to take care of yourself. I'm going to talk for about 2 minutes about sexual assault and harassment and the culture within fraternities and connections to sorority culture. If that's something that's particularly triggering to you, please feel free to turn your volume down or to turn off your screen so you don't see or hear the content. And I will be through this part in about 2 minutes. How can we expect for connection and community to grow in our organizations when folks cannot physically feel safe interacting with our organizations? Please hear me when I say that this section is not me saying that sexual assault and harassment is only perpetrated by men. There are victims of all genders. But one thing that we have data around is the ways that sexual assault and harassment culture exists in and throughout fraternity culture. You see, there was a study done by Fulbert, Tatum, and Newberry in 2007. That's peer-reviewed study that was found that fraternity men are 3 times more likely to commit sexual assault. And if you want any of these studies, if you want to read the full studies, please hit me up afterwards. I am happy to share the studies with you so you can read them more deeply. This is also not the only study done and peer-reviewed and discussed around fraternity culture and its connection to assault and harassment, because there was also a study that was done in 2009, a separate study, also peer-reviewed study, that showed that sorority women experience sexual assault at 4 times the rate of non-sorority women. I think there is a clear connection here that's bigger than coincidence. I think it's something we need to acknowledge and look deeper into in the ways that fraternity culture is conducive for this, and how are we pushing back against this culture that exists within our organizations? How are we challenging? Because we cannot expect for community and connection and all of the best parts of fraternity and sorority culture to exist if folks cannot feel bare minimum safe. And that brings me to hazing. Because if I ask every single viewer on this call, on this session, is your organization non-hazing? You will say yes. We are a non-hazing organization, yet hazing occurs consistently across the country. It is illegal. It is something that you can get huge punishments for. And that's not even where I want to go with talking about hazing. I want to talk about how can we say that community and connection exist, that community and connection can grow, that we can share in our power, and we can create change when we are physically, mentally, and emotionally beating each other down to become us, to be a part of our organizations. Who are we? We can't expect for community and connection and unity to grow when our foundations and the way we're moving and the way we're bringing folks into our organizations is dehumanizing and breaks our spirits. There's this movement that existed much more deeply about 5 years ago, but still exists today, which is the Abolish Greek Life movement. The movement says in the most simplest terms that I can explain it, that fraternities and sororities cause more harm than good on college campuses. Fraternities and sororities cause more harm than good on our college campuses. Are they right? Are they right? I don't think so. But I do think that our organizations have to address these massive barriers and walls and these things that cause harm before we can even think about true community and connection growing and fostering within our organizations. Because at our best, our organizations are creating spaces where folks feel in community with one another. They feel connected to the folks within and around their organizations. We're able to lean into our shared power to create change for the betterment of folks all across our campuses at bare minimum, but for folks all across the country and supporting movements across the world. That's what I believe at our best our organizations are doing. At our worst, we're exacerbating historic and systemic oppressions and replicating them within the walls of our own organizations, the organizations that we joined because we wanted connection, the organizations we joined because we wanted community. I challenge us, I challenge us, I challenge us to be at our best. I want for us to get consistent, and I want for us to take action. And I would be remiss if I didn't spend our last few minutes together talking about just that. Because fraternity and sorority, I talked about a through line for all of us being community. Regardless, for all of our different reasons for joining, community seems to be a through line for all of us. And our community is a big piece of our village. The folks that we can lean on, the folks that we ask for support, the folks that we ask for help in our hardest of times, the folks that we go to in celebration of our highest of times. I want for us to talk about as leaders of our organizations, as community leaders across the Northeast, as people who are a part of other folks' villages. How can we support our village tangibly? And how can we be better community members overall? And the first one starts with this. Simply, we lean on our people more than we even think we do. I mean, honestly, think about the last time that you were just getting dinner with somebody and it turned into a 3-hour-long conversation, or someone came over to your dorm room or your apartment or your house literally to just chill. And next thing you know, it's 2 a.m. and y'all have been talking about all of the things. We lean on each other so much more than we even think we do. And so my challenge to you is to acknowledge it and to thank the folks that we lean on. And I do mean thank them now. So I'm going to ask you honestly, as I'm talking through these examples, take out your phone, or if you're on your laptop, pull up your iMessage. It might already be up. And I want you to just message one person who you think, who you know is a part of your village, one person who you consider a close friend or your parent, or one person that you feel connected to, that you've leaned on, and just tell them thank you. Just say, I appreciate you for being a part of my community. I thank you for being a part of my village. And it's going to be weird. It's going to be awkward because we don't thank people very often. We don't connect with people very often. But this is an opportunity to do so. So I challenge you, just text one person, shoot them a message, call them when you hop off of this session, and just say thank you. I appreciate you for being a part of my village. The next thing of how can you do this is to have radical compassion and empathy. A lot of times, particularly within our organizations, we jump straight to punitive measures whenever someone isn't meeting the arbitrary mark that we've set. Whenever someone isn't paying their dues on time, we start to fine them. Whenever someone doesn't show up to chapter consistently as we would like them to, we start to fine them. Whenever somebody isn't showing up to events, we fine them, we punish them, we put them through standards. I challenge us to take one step before that and have radical compassion and empathy for folks. Whenever that person is late on their dues, don't go immediately to fining them a late fee, but ask them, how are you doing? We notice that you're late on your dues. Is there some support you need? We just want to check in and support you and make sure that check and see if there is anything that's going on. When that person has missed chapter 2 times in a row, not immediately jumping to, they just don't prioritize the chapter the way I do. They just don't care the way I do. Empathy. See how people are doing. We can all acknowledge that these are really difficult times. So let's have compassion and empathy first. And I ask for us to listen when people tell us their valid concerns. When people give us valid concerns about us and ourselves. There were so many people in my village that saw what I was going through, this hard time I was having before I did, but I ignored them, pushed them away because of those feelings of, I don't want to be a burden. It's not that bad. There are things when I was a chapter president that members told me that were valid concerns that I ignored that I wish I didn't. Listen when people tell you their valid concerns. I also firmly believe that life is a lot more about juggling than balancing. You see, we've been told so many times that we're balancing all of these different things. We're balancing work, we're balancing jobs, we're balancing family, we're balancing friends, we're balancing fraternity, we're balancing all these organizations. We're balancing. But I don't look at life that way. I think it's a lot more juggling. You see, I think we're juggling all of these different things all at the same time, many times. But I also believe that some things in life are glass and some things are rubber. Imagine what happens if you drop glass, shatters, and you're probably going to drop everything else that's in your hands. What in your life is glass? What in your life do you refuse to drop? What in your life do you refuse to let shatter? For me, it's my wife and my son. I will not drop that baton. I refuse to drop them. But what in your life is rubber? If you drop a rubber ball, bounces right back up and you can keep juggling in stride. Some things in your life you can drop momentarily, let them bounce back up. What in your life can you drop? It's kind of a radical thought that we're not really given very often. We think we have to hold all the things all the time. But what can you drop? Because life is a lot more about juggling than balancing. And then there's this last piece. And I ask if you didn't hear anything that I've said for the last 42 minutes, but you want to lean in and listen to my beautiful radio voice for 15 more seconds. I ask for you to know you don't have to do any of this on your own. You don't have to navigate any of these moments, any of these events on your own. You don't have to fight any of these battles on your own. You don't have to do any of the work within your organization, within your job on your own. There are people waiting and wanting to be in community with you. There are people waiting and wanting for you to lean on them. There are folks in the offices on campus all throughout the Northeast that are wanting to connect with you. So I ask you to internalize that one note above all else. You don't have to do any of this on your own. And that's what I got for y'all today. I want to share my immense gratitude to NGLA for the opportunity to kick it with y'all for 45 minutes and have a conversation that I think is really important. And I hope that you also see as relevant and important. I would love to know more about what you think about this session. Love to know if you would like for this session, this content on your campus. I want to provide the opportunity for you to connect with me in that way. This QR code on the screen is for that. You can also simply follow me on social media and shoot me a message. I'm down to connect with you and learn with you and help elevate the messages that you all are pushing on your campuses consistently. I'm here to support you. It's the reason that I do this work. It's the reason that I'm here. And so I thank you so much for your time. I thank you for the opportunity to be in connection with you all today. And if you need anything, please don't hesitate to reach out. It takes a village to raise a child, but it takes a village to raise us as we continue to grow and lead. So thank you so much. Hope to see y'all at NGLA in Baltimore in just a couple of weeks. Peace.